Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Nogales, President and CEO of the National Hispanic Media Coalition. Today, I want to tell you about the results of the research study entitled Quantifying Hate Speech on Commercial Talk Radio. It is the first of 3 studies being researched at the UCLA Chicano Studies Center, Research Center. It has been 3 years in the making. It came about as a consequence of NHMC wanting to know the relationship between hate speech and hate crimes. Hate crimes against Latinos have increased by 47% in the past year here in California and by 40% in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. 3 radio programs anchored by Lou Dobbs, Michael Savage, and John and Ken here in Southern California were studied. All 4 personalities have been accused of fomenting fear and hate towards Latinos, specifically the Latino undocumented population, by the opinions they espouse and mouth over the air. Tuesday, November 8th, a press conference was held here in Los Angeles to reveal the results of this first study. The panelists included the principal investigators, Dr. Javier Iribarren and Professor Chon Noriega, and also 2 other experts on the issue of hate speech and its effects, UCLA Professor Otto Santa Ana and Calstate LA Professor Kelly Madison. What were the major findings? Professor Chon Noriega.
We found 148 statements that targeted a vulnerable group or their supporters. 79% of these instances targeted vulnerable groups, and 21% targeted their identified supporters. And what we found is that across the 3 programs, there were 33 instances of a call for action against the vulnerable group. And of the calls for action, most focused on Latinos and immigration. All 33 of them were not calls for action against Latinos or immigrants. They were calls for action against institutional arenas that were seen as supporting Latinos and immigrants. The next area really, I think, was the most surprising to us. We hadn't initially factored this into our thinking. We were looking at the level of how language is used. But what we realized is there were quite a number of fact-based claims that were taking place in these programs. It makes a lot of sense. They're identified as news, talk, radio. Of the 114 fact-based claims that we identified during the 2-hour sample that we were looking at, 37% of them, 42 out of 114, were unsubstantiated. In the final area we looked at, indexicality, or code words, we found 20 instances of indexable terms used to identify certain groups as other to the nation. Terms such as illegal alien, gangbanger, killers, anarchist, calamity, and domestic terrorism indexed Latinos, undocumented immigrants, and immigrant rights advocates, thereby associating these groups with crime, terror, and a foreign enemy. All
right, so the study quantifies hate speech. The important question is, what is the effect of hate speech on people hearing it? Dr. Kelly Madison.
Many of us are very concerned about the media's role in the growing polarization of our society, especially the vitriol that characterizes a significant sector of our political discourse. We're concerned about this because it fosters ideological extremism that not only leads to gridlock in our government's ability to tackle the many issues that we're facing as a nation, but also leads to an increasing incivility in our society and an inability to engage in rational and productive debate. And in some cases, it also leads to actual violence against perceived enemies within our society. It's clear from decades of research that the mass media has a powerful effect in terms of its influence on our thinking and our behavior, including aggressive thinking and violent behavior. So I, as a media scholar and as a citizen, am very concerned about the role some media outlets might be playing in terms of promoting hate speech or rhetoric that aggressively dehumanizes people people who are constructed as the enemy, and therefore fosters a climate of hate and prejudice that can lead to discrimination and violence.
For years, we've known anecdotally that hate speech germinates hate crimes, but we've needed empirical evidence to make that connection. And this study, with its very precise methodology, is a step forward in that direction. As I said, 2 more studies will be forthcoming by the end of this year, and other social scientists will be able to duplicate the research and do more research so that our country holds a national dialogue on the issue. The hope is that this dialogue will rid us of the hate mongers who have created an environment of fear and bigotry that has led to the increases of hate crimes across our nation.